Mason?
Getting warm. Nice weather. It's too cold for you still, Lonnie?
Hello, hello, hello. Who's on with me? Okay, I see that there is Leilani. Hello, Leilani. Hello, Charles. If you can hear me, let me know you can hear me. I know I can see me. So can everyone, I'm curious, can you hear me?
Mike, your audio sounds really bad. Can you go up to zoom.us in the upper left corner, select on preference and make sure it's selecting your headset.
Go to zoom.us.
Up in the upper left corner where your Zoom preference, maybe actually you're on a PC, so I'm not sure exactly where it, but your audio, you need to, it's not picking up your headset.
Oh, okay.
Or you can call in.
I'm gonna test it now. I'll turn to my computer. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Okay, that's what it is. It's fine.
Testing, testing, 1, 2. Karen, how's that? Is that better?
Yep, that did it.
Okay. I wasn't coming through. I hadn't selected it. Okay, cool. Thank you, dear.
And let me see. I don't know if my audio is coming in.
You're coming in nice and clear. I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the volume.
You sound okay to me. Hey, Charles.
Yeah. Hey, how's my audio?
You sound great, man.
Okay, great. Yeah, as you can see, I put the headphone on. Kathy should be here soon too. Whoops, I just lost my my speaker. Okay, there we go.
Karen, are you still there?
I am.
Okay.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Hey, Richard, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good.
So I try to start
Hello?
video. Yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay. I don't know how this works. Oh,
And
shoot.
Leilani, are you there? Hey,
I'm
Richard.
here. Sorry.
Hi, Leilani.
Oh my gosh, it's nice to see you. Okay, I'm trying to. Let me move. Let me move.
And I
Who is-
apologize for my lighting. I was trying to utilize my camcorder. For some reason, it wouldn't pick up, and I decided not to fool with it. So I'm trying to get the best light. I got lights all around. I still look dark.
Oh.
I even got a light right in front of me. I'm like, this is not working.
Oh my god. Okay.
Richard's lighting is perfect.
Yeah, I
Is
know,
it?
Richard. You got perfect light. Richard, you're going to do the class.
Funny.
We got Charles on, Leilani. Hey, Latara, how are you doing? Latara is with us.
Charles' lighting is good too.
Yeah, Charles, you got great lighting too. So Charles and Richard, you will be tag teaming doing this class.
I don't think so.
I sent you the notes.
Yeah, right. Just read. That's all it takes. Is Kathy here? Kathy, are you here but not on?
I see her name, yeah.
Okay.
And Kate is here. Hi, Kate. Glad to see you're on with us. I know you're muted, but glad to see you're here. And Sal, glad to see you're on with us.
I mean, the upstairs kid's bathroom doesn't even work.
Lonnie,
And
Yeah.
we are
are you
getting.
trying to find out how to do the video?
I think so.
You just, there's like a little button on the top right of your image, and you click it, and then it should say start video.
There she is.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Hi, Leilani.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh my god. I feel so nice.
I know we got some more people who's going to be joining us. So we got Karen's here, my wife of 30 years. Charles is here. Leilani's here. Richard's here.
Oh.
Sal. Hey, Sal, if you can, come on and say hi. If you can join, if you can say hi.
This is cool.
It is, yeah.
Leilani, is this your first time on Zoom?
Hey?
Yeah, I've never used this. So.
No, you don't. As long as you're not muted, you're fine.
My first time too, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we're just getting a little feedback. So if you're not speaking, go ahead and mute.
Yeah, everybody go ahead and mute if you're not speaking yet, because we're getting feedback in the background. And then
Yeah, and we
if
want to
you
be
do
able to
wanna say
use.
something- I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Karen, go ahead. I'll let
I
you-
was going to say we want to be able to reuse the content. So we're really mindful, of the experience while we're going through it, because it's when you're reviewing, you want to be able to review without all of the clutter, in the audio clutter. So that sounds good. There's no one speaking. I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and mute.
All righty. And we're going to get started here because we are just a little bit past the top of the hour. And let's see. Hang on just one second. We had someone else who's going to be joining us, and they haven't joined us yet, but they just text me to go, are you on yet? So I just want to make sure to let them know, yes, we are on. All right. So, hey, Karen, I didn't know you were going to be joining us live like this. Okay, everyone, first of all, just let me say once again, happy birthday to my wife. It was her birthday yesterday. So everybody wish her a happy birthday. Go ahead. Happy birthday, wave.
Happy birthday.
So let's pray, and then we'll start. We'll get into this. Father, I just thank you in Jesus' name for being able to come together and share and delve into what we need to do, Lord, in order to have relationships that are successful, emotionally successful relationships where we are living happily ever after from the inside out. And I thank you, Lord, for just leading us, guiding us, giving us your wisdom in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Okay, so hey, Karen, if you're there, could you go to Deborah Wright, which is my aunt also, and she's trying to log on. I think she's having some difficulty. I sent her the link, but she might be having some difficulty. Okay, so we are talking about the emotionally successful marriage, and this is 5 sessions that we're going to be meeting And this is going to also be interactive. Okay. So I want your input. I'll be asking you questions. I want you to share your answers. I want you to ask questions of me during the time that we are together. And I will do the very best I can to answer. So let me give you a little bit of some background where this is concerned. So let me see. Okay. Because it kind of sets the context for this. So as most of you know, Karen and I, we've been married 30 years. It'll be 31 years in September 24th of this year. We've been married 31 years. Yeah. Thank you, Leilani. Now, here's the thing. I love my wife. We've been together, and I'm glad she's on with us, so she can jump in and chime in anytime she wants, since she controls a lot of things behind the scenes, so she can jump in at any time. But the first 7 years of our marriage was difficult. The first 7 years was difficult because of the effects and the scars of abuse that had been suffered, especially on Karen's side, for in the early years of her life. Karen had been, as many of you know already, our story, she had been molested as a child, raped as a child, physically abused, emotionally abused, and she just, had all this bad stuff happen to her when she was a child. We did not think, and I was not thinking, that when we got married that this was going to be a problem. I met Karen when I was just turning 21 when I met her. So we were both young, and we were friends for a year. We were engaged for 2 years, and then we get married. And I was a virgin when we got married. I had waited. I was thinking I had waited for this person. I prayed for this person. When I was 15 years old and I knew I was called into ministry, I said a prayer to God and said, God, I'm going to focus on preparing for ministry. Please bring to me the person that you want me to be with. And God, the thing that I ask for is that she just love you with all of her heart, all of her mind, all of her soul, all of her strength. That was the only requirement that I had, that it would be someone who loved God. I can definitely say Karen is that person. Now, what we didn't know was that there was going to be problems. And so when we got married, immediately, immediately, 12 weeks after we were married, Karen comes to me and she says, I don't want to be married anymore. I don't like being married. Yeah, Richard's like, what? Yeah, 12 weeks. And she says, I don't like being physically intimate. I don't want to be married to you anymore. And I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. Keep in mind, I'm 23 years old. I've never been married before. Karen's the first person I've ever been with. Karen is actually the only person I've ever dated. Okay. She was my first in many, many different ways. She was the only, I didn't date during my high school years because I was focused in ministry. I was doing ministry. Karen was the first person I was with, first person I date, very first girlfriend. And so it was like, wow, okay. And I was devastated. I actually started crying. I didn't know what to do. I was so hurt because this was not the idea. This was for me, on my end, it was like, you are the person I've waited for all my life. And to be told this, it was just devastating for me. So I didn't know what to do. I did the only thing I knew to do at the time. And that was, I started praying. I said, God, what do I do? And in my own life, there were things that I was struggling with in terms of fears and torments that I was struggling with myself. I needed answers for that. But what had begun to happen was, and just let me share just a little bit more detail. When Karen and I would try to come together as husband and wife, she would literally clench up like this. And she didn't want to be touched. What we didn't know at the time was that she was experiencing what we now know to be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And when Karen said to me one time, this is years later, she says, when you reach for me, I don't see your hand. I see the hand of everyone who's molested me, who's taken advantage of me. But we didn't know this at the time. I knew nothing about PTSD. All the stuff I teach now, I didn't know at all. And so this was like completely, totally, just out of my realm of experience. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I just began praying. I literally would just say to God, God, I don't know what to do. You're going to have to show me what to do. I don't know what to do. And I can say this, I'm going to kind of shorten a little bit. Little by little, God began to give me some keys, or I call them key principles. He began to show me little by little things that I could do that could make a difference in our relationship. And little by little, I started learning different principles. And I should say, actually, little by little, Karen and I both, we started learning principles. We started learning strategies, and we started applying them in our relationship. And little by little, it began to create change. Now I can say this, it was 7 years before on my end, that I really experienced a shift and a change. For me, it was phenomenal when one night, as we're lying in bed, Karen says to me, "I trust you." And that was huge because I know that she didn't really trust. Matter of fact, and again, if she wants to, she can jump in here. Let me tell you how I was introduced to Karen the very first time I met her. When I first met Karen, the lady who introduced us was a mutual friend of ours. She said, "Oh, Mike, I want you to meet Karen. She doesn't like men." This is how we were introduced to each other. Literally, the very first thing I learned about Karen is she doesn't like men. And so I'm looking at our friend, I'm going, okay, I'm a guy, so what exactly are you saying here? I'm a guy. Why, you know? She said, no. I want Karen to meet a nice, godly young man. What I didn't know at that point was that she had had a lot of bad experiences. And so she's like, I want her to meet a nice, godly young man. But this was our introduction. And by the way, I have to tell you that when we first met, Karen, we were sitting there talking. She looked at me and she said, "I hope this guy doesn't start liking me." So I always tease her, I go like, "Man, conceited." I hope this guy doesn't start liking me. But that was our introduction. And so we started, you know, we were in our marriage, and we're struggling with these things. She doesn't want to be touched. I'm young. I'm in my early 20s, but we're learning these principles. We're learning these strategies. And little by little, this enabled us to begin to experience different. What for me was, because things did not change overnight. It was 7 years before there was a real significant shift and change from my perspective. And what I learned to do in that 7-year period is that I learned to live in peace. I learned to be joyful. I learned to be content during this time period. Now, I'm not going to tell you I was perfect, because I was not, and I made mistakes, but I learned to be happy. I learned to be joyful. I learned to be content within our relationship before things changed in terms of our intimacy. And a lot of times people think, when we tell our story, people think, "Wow, you know, that's impossible. How were you able to do that?" I was able to do that, but it was certain key principles. And these principles and these strategies that I learned that helped me to be joyful, to be peace, to be calm. I learned more and more how to communicate better with Karen. What it did is that it not only enabled me to be at peace, it not only enabled me to be content. And let me say by content, let me explain what I mean by content. I'm basing that off of that word, off of a passage of scripture, for those of us that are scripturally minded here. Philippians chapter 4, where the Apostle Paul makes the statement about his life. He said, "I have learned," in Philippians chapter 4, I believe it's verse 11, "I have learned in whatever situation that I am in to be content." Now, I used to think that the word content meant to be satisfied with the little. That's what I thought the word content meant, to be happy or satisfied with the little. So I want to say that's not what I mean by content. One day I looked up this word content in Philippians 4:11. I found out that this word actually means to be independent of external situations or circumstances. To be independent of external situations or circumstances. This is what I mean by I learned to be content in my marriage. I learned to be independent of what was going on. In other words, my joy, my happiness, my peace, eventually my sense of worth and value was independent of what was going on in the relationship. That enabled me to stay faithful to Karen in the relationship. Because, you know, as I've talked with this, and I especially what has grown out of this is the marital coaching that I do. A lot of times I'm dealing with couples who are dealing with similar things, and they'll go like, "Well, you know, how does my spouse expect me to love them? And, you know, I feel rejected. My needs are not being taken care of." And these are all of the things. And by the way, you guys can ask me any questions you want at any point here. And they say, "Well, how can you do that, Mike? It's just impossible." I go, "No, it's not impossible. I did it. And I did it for 7 years. But it's learning certain key principles. It's learning certain key strategies. Now, here's the thing. These principles and strategies not only enable me to be content, which is to be independent, to where my happiness, my joy, my faithfulness was not dependent upon how Karen was responding to me. it became independent of that. Now, this is going to be one of the things we're going to talk about that is so important to having an emotionally successful marriage, where you're living happily ever after from the inside out. These principles not only enable me to be content, to be independent in terms of what I was thinking, what I was feeling, how I was behaving, but they also helped Karen and I together to create an environment where our marriage could flourish. We didn't just survive. We weren't just surviving, we actually thrived. And like I said, here we are 30 years later, almost 31 years later, and we're still together. We've been together total 33 years. Now, I give you that background, just a little bit of our background, because I want you to know where I'm coming from. That this is stuff that was learned. What I'm sharing with you is stuff that was learned in the heat of battle. These are not things that, you know, I took a course or I just read a book and it's like, okay, now I'm going to go share this with the world. No, this was stuff I learned the good old fashioned way. Now, of course, I was doing a lot of reading. I did a lot of research, and I was applying everything that I was learning. And I have to say, when we first started off, and I can say this, what you're going to be learning over the 5 weeks, I didn't know all of this when we first started. You're getting a big head start. I was listening to a friend of mine, Dr. Will Moreland, today, and he was talking about the importance of getting the right help, getting the right mentors, getting the right coaches when you're trying to learn to do something. Because what a coach will do, a mentor will do, a teacher will do, will help you to accelerate your learning. It will help you to close the gap. Everything I'm going to be sharing with you, you could go learn on your own. You would not have to pay me you could go learn all of this on your own. Trust me, the information's out there, but it would just take time. But now you're in a position where you can learn some of the things that I have learned in an accelerated manner. And I'm sharing with you things that I know work. If you will do it, it will work for you in terms of helping you to create a relationship, helping you to create the experience that you want in your marriage that you enjoy, that you are able to live happily ever after. Now, this seminar, this workshop, I should say, this workshop is for two people. Number one, if you're married and you're saying, you know what, I want to have a better marriage. And so, Mike, I want to learn the things that you're talking about. This definitely is for you, especially if you and your wife, you and your partner, if you're committed to working together and applying these tools, trust me, they will work. If you are single and you're in a relationship and you say, you know what, I'm going to be married one day, or let's say you're single, you're not in a relationship, but I want to be married. And so I want to learn some foundational tools, and everything I'm sharing with you, I consider to be key foundational strategies and tools. I call them foundational stones that make for a great marriage. If you're single and you're in a relationship, you're going to be married today, this is for you. If you're single and you're not yet in a relationship, but you know you will be one day, this is for you. If you are married and you might feel like, I'm married, but my spouse is not really trying, my spouse is not really giving the effort, this is also for you. So actually it's 3 people. This is also for you because I'm sharing with you time-tested tools and strategies that can really make a difference. Now listen, I can't promise you, if you have a spouse that is not willing to do the work, I cannot guarantee that this will change them. However, I can say that if you apply the things that we will be talking about, you can create an environment that will influence your spouse, that can have a positive impact upon him or her. I remember Karen said to me one time that one of the things that helped her where I was concerned was that I gave her space to grow. I gave her space to breathe. And that wasn't by accident. What I mean by not by accident, it was because of specific things that I was doing, specific things that at that point in my life, God was teaching me and showing me to do that was just, I now look back and I go, man, that was very wise to do. Now, I don't want to try to take all the credit because Karen, and I'm not taking all the credit, Karen did a lot of tremendous work. Karen also applied a lot of tools and strategies that created a change in her experience. But these are the things we're going to be sharing with you. These key principles, these strategies that I'm going to be sharing, these are the very principles and strategies that I use in the coaching that I do with couples. I do premarital coaching. I have people that get referred to me from churches often that, matter of fact, practically all of the marital coaching I do is referrals. People are, you know, and it's funny, I never set out to be a marital coach. In some ways, I really don't think of myself as a marital coach, but I kept getting referrals. People kept sending, because they would hear that I work with somebody and help them through their difficulty. and pastor friends of mine would say, hey, can you work with this person? And so we've had success in that. The tools I'm going to be sharing with you, these are the tools that I utilize. You're going to be learning some of the process that I take people through that help them to experience change and transformation where their marriage is concerned. So they will help you to create an emotionally successful marriage or relationship where you are living happily ever after from the inside out. So first of all, does anybody have any questions at this point about anything I shared about our experience? Any questions or comments? I love comments. So if you do, just turn on your mic and come on. And I know there are some of you. Go ahead, Richard.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to know, so how long is this session? When is it going to end? Like what time?
Today?
Yeah.
We will be ending about 5:30 my time. So we go about an hour and a half.
Okay, cool.
Okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? And for those of you that are listening, we also have a chat. So some people may not be able, you can go ahead and write in chat. And if you have a question there, we will respond to that. Okay, no questions, no comments. All right, then I'm going to move on from here. Let me define what I mean by an emotionally successful marriage. An emotionally successful marriage, as I define it, is a marriage where your emotions or your emotional experience, it works for you rather than against you in support of your relationship. An emotionally successful marriage is a relationship. Emotionally successful marriage is a marriage where your emotions or your emotional experience works for you rather than against you in the support of your relationship. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me read to you something, and it's funny because I've been teaching this, and we got we got some from Kate here. Kate said, Mike, you and Karen's history, experience, and the wisdom God has given you is like gold. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that. For years, I've been teaching this stuff, and for those of you that know me, I brand myself as an emotional success coach. I focus on the emotions, helping people to get their emotions to work for them rather than against them. And people often wonder, why do you focus on the emotions? Why do you focus on the emotions? And because years ago, I started to realize this is where people mostly have problems. When people come to me, it's because they're not feeling good. It's because they're in emotional pain. It's because they are stuck. Now, there are other things we need to work with, but primarily, this is what motivates them to come. And most of their problems often are rooted in how they are feeling. And if we can get them unstuck where their feelings are concerned, and not only get them unstuck, but get their emotions or their emotional experience to support them, they tend to do much better. Now, I remember there are times people would kind of think, oh, well, no, it's not completely that. You got to work on other things. I go, yes, I know that's true, but this is so important. I noticed when I started working with couples early on, before I started shifting the way I do things now, I used to try to teach people communication skills. I would try to teach people, how to set goals for their relationship. I would teach them all this. Guess what would happen? People would walk away and they would go, oh, this is really good. This is really cool. They would walk away, go home. They would get into an argument or fight. They would get upset and forget everything that we said in that session. And they wouldn't apply it. They come back to the next session. I go, well, how did things go? Did you communicate? Did you use active listening? I forgot. Okay. Or, yeah, well, we started to, but I got really upset and I just couldn't remember anything that you told me. All right. And little by little, I kept seeing this over and over. I'm going like, what is it that? And I thought to myself, well, a lot of these things I'm teaching them I taught people how to resolve conflict because I've done that. I'm certified in helping people to resolve conflict. I've helped people to set goals. And these are things we're going to be talking about. But I kept noticing they weren't applying it. And I started to realize people are stuck emotionally, or they get hijacked emotionally. And when they feel one way when they are in the when we're together and we're talking, I'm coaching them. But once they leave, then their emotions, negative feelings and emotions begin to get the best of them, and they don't get the type of results that they're looking for. And so I began to notice, and I began to realize I need to do something different. And so I began looking at what do I need to shift my focus. And this is how I started really focusing on the emotional aspect of it. And I made that more important. And then years later, I'm doing some research. I'm always doing research. And I found this book called The Emotional Intelligence in Couples Therapy by Brent J. Atkinson. He said this, and I remember when I read this, I went, oh my goodness, I'm not crazy. Okay. He said, people fail to think and act in ways that promote relationship success because they repeatedly find themselves in the wrong frame of mind when certain types of thinking or action is needed. So let me say, in order to have an emotionally successful marriage, there are certain ways you need to think and act. Certain ways you need to think and act. This is what will create an emotionally successful marriage. But like he said here, often people fail because they are in a frame of mind that keeps them from thinking and acting in ways that they need to succeed. He goes on to say they cannot sustain requisite attitudes or actions because the juice that fuels these attitudes and actions isn't there. Many times the problem isn't knowledge. They often know very well what to do. The problem is not ability. They've done it many times before. The problem is motivation, how they feel. So to get better at relationship success, and this is the key thing, he says clients must first develop more ability to influence their internal states. Let me say that again. To get better at relationship success, clients must first develop more ability to influence their internal states. And this is what I began to see years ago. And I was so thankful to read this a few years ago when I picked up this book, that here's a psychologist that is saying this. He works with couples, and he recognized that, hey, you know what? When we work with couples and they're in the couples therapy session, for me, we call it a coaching session, everything is fine. But once they leave out, if they start to feel bad, if they start to feel horrible, if they get angry, if they get upset, or they become afraid, or they feel insecure, everything that was said in that session gets forgotten. And it becomes about protecting themselves. See, let me ask this question, and just raise your hand. And for those of you that are on chat, just go, amen. How many of you have ever in your relationship felt insecure? I'm raising my hand. You felt insecure. And how many of you, when you felt insecure in the relationship, you start to get defensive, right? And so someone will say something to you, and all of a sudden you start getting defensive, and then you might start responding in a certain way. And your partner will look at you and go, "Why are you acting like this? What's wrong with you?" And it's because you're feeling attacked. See, that's what we're talking about. Your internal states begin to take over. And when they begin to take over, it begins to motivate you in actions and behaviors that don't contribute to relationship success. It contributes to relationship failure. And it's not that you want that. It's not that you desire that. But because of the internal states, whether it's fear, whether it's insecurity, whether it's defensiveness, I can give you one for Karen and I. I remember years ago, I used to hate talking with Karen about our finances. We always got into an argument whenever we had to talk about the budget. And she would say, Mike, let's talk about the budget for the week. And my attitude was always, oh, dear God, here we go again. And it was always negative for me. And I approached it negatively. As a result, we always had a negative experience. And I had to learn, and I'll share with you a little bit later how, but I had to learn to change my internal states to where it became more positive. In that 7 years, when I was learning, I began to learn, the thing that I began to learn to do was how to change my internal state so that my happiness, my joy, my peace, the thing that we're looking for, when we are in relationships, one of the things that we all want is to be fulfilled in the relationship. We have different names for the fulfillment. Maybe we want to be at peace. Maybe we want to feel content. I would say the major thing is we all want to be happy. We want to be happy in the relationship. Here's the difficulty, and this is kind of getting ahead of myself. If we go into a relationship looking, and we're not happy, and we're looking for the relationship, or we're looking for the other person to make us happy, that's almost a sure recipe for failure. It's almost a sure recipe for failure. Now, I'm not saying that the other person can't contribute to your happiness. What I am saying is that if you don't know how to bring happiness to the relationship, it sets you up for failure. And that's the thing I had to learn to do. I had to learn to be happy. I had to learn to be joyful. I had to learn to be at peace. I had to learn to have my own sense of worth and value that was independent of what was going on in the relationship. The thing that when I'm working with couples, this is one of the things that I'm constantly doing, is helping them to shift to where I'm looking for the relationship. I'm looking for my partner to make me happy. I'm looking for my partner to make me feel worthwhile. I'm looking for my partner. And it's something that's outside of them that they're trying to bring within. And by the way, that puts an incredible amount of strain on your partner or a lot of burden on your partner, because you're asking them to really be something that they're not really called to be. And that is the source of your well-being, the source of it. I'm not saying they can't contribute. Karen contributes to my well-being. But there's a difference between someone contributing to your well-being and looking for someone to be the source of your well-being. Okay, so let me go back here. So Brent J. Atkinson, he and I have the same mindset where working with couples are concerned. You've got to develop the ability to influence your own internal states. Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he is a psychologist. He wrote a book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. He wrote this in his book. And for those of you that have been following me, you've heard me quote this a lot. People who are able to control their internal experience will be able to determine the quality of their lives. Now, he's basically saying the same thing as Brent J. Atkinson. You've got to be able to influence your internal states. But he said if you're able to control your internal experience, you're able to choose your internal experience, you're going to be able to determine the quality of your life. Now, let me take this and I'm going to adapt this a little bit. The quality of your marriage, the quality of your relationship, it is determined by the quality of your internal experience. The quality of your marriage, the quality of your relationship is determined by the quality of your internal experience. If you take control of your internal experience, then you take control of and you're able to determine how you will experience your relationship. Let me say that again. If you take control of your internal experience, then you will be able to take control of and you will be able to determine the quality of your marriage, the quality of your relationship. Sal said, we can't give what we don't have. Exactly. Using emotional intelligence is part of the internal state to be healthy because it is not based on circumstances, but on how we choose to respond to them. Sal is right. Sal, you're jumping ahead of me though. Sal is teaching my message here tonight. But he's exactly right. The thing about it is, if you want to be able to determine your emotional, if you want to be determined the experience of your relationship, of your marriage, of your relationship, you've got to start taking control of your internal experience, not your partner's, your internal experience. Now, there are three key fundamental principles that make this happen. What I'm going to share with you are the three things basically throughout the next 4 weeks, beginning today, and the next 4 weeks is what we're going to be talking about. What are the three fundamental principles? Number one is choice. You've got to get to a place where you are exercising choice. Number two is personal responsibility. And we're going to be talking about these. Personal responsibility, that's the second key principles. And then number three is being able to create and transform your experience. Being able to create and transform your own experience, both individually, you transform and create your own experience individually, but also as a couple. As a couple, you can create your experience of your relationship together. One of the things, if you were to come to me, if you're having difficulty in your relationship, you say, Mike, I want help. What I tell every couple is this: whatever you are currently experiencing, if you don't like it, change it. If you don't like what you're currently experiencing, create a different experience. You're not locked into any experience that you have. You can change it. But in order to change it, there are three key principles that you have to function by, that you have to live by, that you have to exercise. One is choice or decision, personal responsibility, and the third one is creating and transforming your experience. And we're going to talk about how you do all of those. All right? So let's talk about, we're going to get into choice tonight. What is the key to a good marriage? The key to a good marriage really is, the key to a good relationship is to be a good partner in the relationship. The key to a good marriage is to be a good marital partner. Now that sounds simple, but I try to keep things simple. I try not to be a complex guy. I try to keep it simple. But honestly, that is the key. To have a good marriage, to have a great marriage, you have to decide that you're going to have a good marriage. If you want a great marriage, you have to decide you're going to have a good marriage, which also means you have to choose on purpose that you are going to be a good marriage partner. You're going to be a great marriage partner. You're going to be a great partner in the relationship. You have to choose and decide you're going to be that. Someone came to Karen and I years ago after we've been married for a while, and they go, "You guys have a really good relationship. Why is that?" And I think they knew some of our background. They knew that Karen had been abused. They knew that where both of us were concerned, we came from families where there was a lot of divorce. And so statistically speaking, we could have, statistically speaking, we could have ended up another statistic. We could have just been divorced, especially with what we were dealing with. We could have been divorced. And when they said to me, "Why do you have a good marriage?" I thought about it for a moment, and I said very simply, it's because we decided to. It was that simple. Now, when I say it's that simple in terms of the answer, yeah, it was that simple. In terms of carrying it out, there was work that needed to be done. But we have a good marriage. I believe we have a great marriage, and we're always working on it, but it's because we decided. Do not underestimate the power of a decision. You've got to decide certain things to have a great marriage. You've got to decide that you are going to be a great partner in the relationship. You want a great marriage? Decide to be a great partner. Now listen, you've got to decide this independent of your partner. Everybody hear me on that? If you're going to be a great partner in the relationship, you must decide independent of your partner that you're going to be a great partner. Or put it like this: if you're going to have a great marriage, you've got to decide, I'm going to be a great spouse independent of my spouse. Why do you think you have to make this decision independent of your spouse? Now, on your handout, if you have the handout printed out, there's some space for you to write something down. So I want you to take a moment. If you don't have the handout out yet, just respond to this question. I want you to think about it. If you can, write it down. Why do you think you must decide that you're going to be a great partner or a great spouse independent of your spouse or partner? Why must you do that independently of them? Why must you make that decision independent of them? I want you to think about it, write down your answer. For those of you that are on chat, I want you to write your answer in the chat. So I'm going to give you a few moments to do this. This is the interaction part. Then I want you guys to come on and share your different answers. So take a moment. Think about, why must I decide independently of my partner, independently of my spouse, that I am going to be a great spouse? And when you believe you have the answer, just go ahead, turn on your mic and come on and share your answer. Well, Lenny, why are you laughing? Okay, we got some answers here over in the chat. And Kate said, because I am responsible for me and my decisions. Charles wrote, otherwise you will make excuses that will cause you not to act. Okay. Anyone else?
Hello? Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Leilani.
I think it's because I can control my own actions and my own responses. So that's what I can control, is myself.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, great answer. All right. Richard, what do you got? Got an answer yet? And everybody else is on here, I want to hear from you. So if you can write over in chat. Charles said, you can't really control what the other persons may do or what they may bring. Okay, there we go. Or what they may bring. Yeah, you can't really control what the other person may do or what they may bring. Right, Charles. Other answers. Sal said, first is based on obedience, which takes sacrifice from self, flesh, ego, which leads to deliverance of moving forward or making breakthroughs. Okay, good. Other answers from some of our other participants. You guys can write it in chat or just come on and share your answers. Gonna wait one more minute here. Okay. And Kate said it may convict the other person to do the right thing. Kate said it takes, Kathleen said it takes two to tango. What kind of relationship do you want to have? Right. Okay, cool. Okay, so I agree with all those answers. Oh, somebody asked something. Hang on. Let me get one more here. Charles said, I think marriage can be difficult at times and it requires the power of two to succeed. Yeah. Now, yes, this is very true. If your marriage is really going to, if you're going to have an emotionally successful marriage, well, the other person needs to be working with you. My marriage is good. My marriage is great, not just because of me by myself. My wife also contributes to that. However, to start the ball rolling, it can take just one person. It can take just one person. Here's why you've got to decide this on your own. And you guys were all hitting on this answer. If you wait for the other person to make that decision that they're going to be a great spouse to, you may never get to a great marriage. One of the things you don't want to do is make your decisions about how you're going to be, how you're going to respond, how you're going to live in the marriage dependent upon the other person. This is why I emphasized earlier about the word content meaning being independent of external situations and circumstances, because if you make your life dependent upon other people and their actions and their behaviors, you won't go very far. You won't get the results that you're looking for. To kind of share with you a little bit more about my story. I remember, this is again, our first year of marriage. I'm 24, I'm laying in bed, and I'm complaining about my life. It was I believe it was a Saturday morning, and I am complaining about my life. And I'm complaining because I feel like certain people told me certain things, and I followed their advice, and it didn't work out the way that I thought it should, or the way they told me that it should, or I thought that they said. And I'm just complaining. I like, I should be here by now. I should have went to school and did this by now. I should have this, and I don't. And it's all because I listened to these. And I was just complaining. I mean, if you would have saw me back then, you would have went, wow, Mike, because I was just upset. And in the midst of that, I was not looking for this. I didn't expect it to happen. I really believe with all my heart, God spoke to me in that moment as I was complaining. I wasn't even praying. I was just complaining. But I heard this, two things. One was, yes, they gave you advice. They gave you counsel. People told you to do certain things, but you chose to do it. Yes, they told you to take this path, but you chose to take the path. Yes, they said, if you do this, this will happen, but you chose to listen and you chose to do it. And then I heard this, your life is a reflection of the decisions that you have made. If you want a better life, then make better decisions. And then I heard this passage of scripture, Deuteronomy 30:19, that says, I've set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life that both you and your seed may live. And in that moment, I recognized that I had a choice. Choice and exercising your ability to choose is one of the key foundational stones for building an emotionally successful marriage. It is the choices that you make. That moment changed my life. I point to that moment in time as absolutely changing, changing my life. See, and on your handout, I have an important learning point. Everything, and I'm going to qualify this in just a moment. Everything that you've experienced in your marriage, everything that you've experienced in your relationship up until now is the result of decisions. It's the result of choices. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about this, we're talking about decisions or choices that have been made either by you or by your partner or by the both of you together. It's either decisions you have made, decisions your partner have made, or decisions that you've made together. But what you are experiencing in your marriage, in your relationship, up until this point is a result of the decisions and the choices that you have made. So this is what I like for you to do. For those of you, I think everybody's still here. I want you to do this because I want you to see the power of this. I want you to think about your relationship, and I want you to write down, I want you to think about 4 decisions that you or your partner has made that has affected your relationship for good or bad. I want you to write down, first of all, 2 decisions that your that you either, I want you to write down one decision that you made that you say that was a bad decision and it impacted our relationship for bad. My spouse made this decision and it impacted our relationship for bad. Now, you don't got to show this to your spouse or to your partner. I want you to write it down though. And this, again, this is your own perspective, but we're going to start off with the quote negative. We'll start off there first, and then we'll end on the good. So I want you to think about what is one decision that you've made that you can point to and say, yeah, when I made that decision, that was not a good decision. It resulted in, it created some bad results. It created a bad experience, okay? And then think about one that your partner did that caused a bad, it affected your relationship for the bad. Then once you finish that, I want you to think about a decision you made that was a good decision and it impacted your relationship for good. And a decision that your spouse made that was a good decision and it impacted your relationship for good. Okay? So go ahead and do that. And once you're finished, what I'd like for you to do is to, if you can, to share, from that, one relationship, and if it's not too personal, if it's too personal, don't share it. But I'd like you to share, I did this and yeah, Mike, that was a bad relationship. Like for one, I can tell you one that I did. I was thinking about what I could share. And this was happened to Karen and I years ago. And I'm just going to do somebody just contacted me. Hang on one second. Oops. Somebody was talking about joining us. I told them, come on and join us. Okay. Years ago, this is years ago, Karen and I was going to this seminar. The seminar was put on by my mentor, Dr. William Bean. He had brought in these scholars from around the world, these biblical scholars from around the world. And I was so excited. I was like, man, I'm going to meet like these, for me, these scholars are like my heroes. And we have been having problems with our car. And as we were driving, the car started smoking a little bit. Karen, it was dropping me off. She's going to take the car. I have my backpack. I'm so excited about, oh man, I'm getting to see all these scholars. I'm going to get to learn the Bible. I'm going to learn about, Christianity in its first century Jewish context. I'm going to be able to sit with these guys and eat lunch with these guys. I'm so excited. So excited. Been looking forward to this for months. We get there. The car is smoking. I get out and I just say to Karen, okay, she's, well, the car is smoking. I said, okay, well, I don't know what I said, like take it in or like, you're okay, well, take care of it, And I left. That was like the worst decision I could have made. I left my wife with a smoking car. And it was a bad decision. And, for you, and I'll be honest with you, I was so naive. I was so clueless. I really was. And I did not get that I should have stayed. I always say if I had a time machine, I would go back in time and I would go back to my younger self and I would say to my younger self, do you want to be married for a long time? Get back in that car and go with your wife. The thing I was focused on was, man, I'm going to be with these scholars. I'm going to learn. And I wasn't attentive. I wasn't sensitive to the needs of my wife. And she was mad at me. She was mad at me for a while. She was upset and she had every right to be, because it's like I left her. Now in my mind, I was thinking, Karen's smart. She can handle it. But there was selfishness because I was like, I want to go do that. I've been waiting on this for months. I made a bad decision and it adversely, I mean, we didn't get divorced or anything, but it impacted her attitude towards me. It impacted our relationship because of a dumb decision that I made in that moment. Okay. Now, who's with me? Who else has made don't leave me hanging. Who else has made a bad decision?
Well, Mike, let me just follow up because you said that we didn't get divorced, but that was actually the beginning.
Yeah.
Of the seed of the bitter root that got planted when I wanted a divorce at the 10-year mark.
Yeah.
So it's even though, and I didn't even realize that it took a therapist telling me that I was angry, and I didn't. And then when I started thinking about these, as for him would be naive areas that was not handled in a way where I felt like I was safe and taken care of. And I was competent and I could take care of things on my own. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was don't expect me to do it, or just relegate it to me and not give any thought about
Right.
it needing to be done.
Right.
So it actually was really one of the things that brought me to a very dark place in our marriage, in my with myself, in my walk with God, and wanting to leave the marriage.
Right. So
Hi,
again, that's
y'all.
why
It
go
gets
ahead.
better.
So and so the reason I'm sharing that is because I want you to know when we make decisions, your decisions they impact your relationship. Your decisions will impact how you're going to, like I said, what we were experiencing, and after that was the result of a decision I made. Then it was a result of decisions that she began making, and it began to create something that was not good. So I'm curious, anybody else have anything they want to share with that's concerned? Sal said, okay, Charles said, thank you for sharing the impact of Mike's decision on you. That helps me see some things differently. Yeah. Now, and now if I was to share something good, there were things that I did, like during that first year, there were positive decisions I made. Like one of the things I never did was I never went to the Bible and said, hey, the Bible says that you're my wife and you're supposed to do this. I never did that. I never did that. And that was a positive thing. So there were also good decisions I made that had a positive impact, where Karen said at one point, you created space for me to be able to breathe. The point I want you to see is our decisions, what we choose to think, how we're choosing to feel, how we're choosing to act, that creates the experience of our relationship. Whatever experience you are having does not come out of nowhere. It comes out of the decisions that you're making, the choices that we are making. And so that's why I had you do this exercise, so you can be aware of the fact that, hey, and also why I shared, because we make decisions. And by the way, I did not know at the time that she was even thinking about getting a divorce. I had no idea that she was thinking about doing that. And I was shocked later on when I found out. And because we came out one day, we were talking, and it was years later, she says, and you left me with that card. I'm like, what card? She said, you know that time? And she brought it back. I went, oh my gosh. And I did not know. I apologized profusely because I had no idea. I didn't know that had bothered her like that. I'm thinking, oh, she can handle it. Karen's smart. I'm thinking I'm coming from a positive place. It's like, no, you left your wife. Like I said, if I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self, boy, get back in the car. I've told young men sometimes, I've been around young men, and I love working with young men. And I've worked with young men where they have I've seen them say things that are just nuts. And I've said to them, do you want to be married for a long time? They go, yeah. I go, don't ever do that again. If you want to be married for a long time. And they listen to me. Okay, Sal said, today I decided to go running before church. I was feeling good, so I decided to run an extra mile, which made me late coming back. And my wife was very upset because she went to church with my son, Emmanuel, and I left her going to church. She calls me, conflict on expectation. She vents, tell me I need to be delivered, that I was impacting them based on my decision of not getting to church with her, and how I would even think that we should come to church or on time together as a family. That made me very upset, so I decided not to go to service at all, forget getting late. So yes, I let my flesh take over my pride. She felt alone, not a wise decision. Thank you for sharing that, because that's new and fresh. Thank you for being so honest, Sal. Yeah, see, it's those type of decisions. Now, here's the thing that's always so important. That again, it goes back to the decisions that we make. Here's the thing, though, that's really important that I want you to be aware of. And this is on your handout, page 3 of the handout. What is most important in terms of your own personal experience are the decisions that you make. What is most important, and I'm going to say this is going to sound weird, but what is most important is not really the decisions your spouse makes or your partner makes. What's most important in terms of your own experience is the decisions that you make. It is your decisions, independent of your partner, independent of your spouses. It is your decisions that are most important. Why do you think this is so? Why do you think it is your decisions that are most important? Take a moment to think about that. There should be a space on your handout to write your answer down. Why is it, in terms of your own personal experience, independent of your partners, that what is most important is the decisions that you make. Why are your decisions so important? And once you have your answer, turn on your mic and come and share, or write over in the chat your answer to this question. What is most important is really not the decision your spouse makes. What is most important is the decisions that you make. Why is that so important? To know that, to accept that. Now, we're not saying your spouse's decisions or your partner's decision is not important. What I'm saying is, in terms of your own personal experience, what's most important is the decisions you make.
I think it's kind of similar to the other one because I can choose, I can control what I think or what I decide. So
Okay.
I'm in charge of myself.
Okay, you're in charge of yourself. Yeah, Latar jumped in. Thank you, Latar. Latar said, because my decisions will guide my actions, attitude, and behavior.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Is that what you're saying, Leilani?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Sal said, accountability. Take responsibility for my own actions so that I can change my attitude versus making excuses. Okay, now that's good, Sal. And it's good what Latar said, good what Leilani said. But why is that so important? Why is it important to know that my decisions are going to guide my actions, attitude, and behavior? My decisions can change my attitude, and it keeps me from making excuses. Why is that so important? And this is not a trick question. And your answers are correct. I'm just leading it down a little bit more.
Is it like taking leadership, or I don't know, like
Yes.
taking ownership of yourself and like, I don't know, it's your life. Not, well, it is your life, but it's being responsible.
Yeah, being responsible is what my good friend Andrew Bryant calls self-leadership. You've got to be responsible for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I ask, why is that so important?
Why? Oh, I don't know. Nothing.
It's not, again, not a trick question. Here it is. Let me share with you what it is. And by the way, Sal said, because the truth will set you free. You're right, Al. Sal. The truth does set you free. Here it is. The reason it's so important is because, number one, there are certain things outside of your control. Certain things are outside of your control, like your partner's decisions. You can't control your partner's decisions. Karen, when she told me, and Karen did tell me at one point, she says, I don't want to be married. This is after we had overcome a bunch of stuff. And then later on, she came and she said to me, I don't want to be married to you anymore. Second time I hear this. Again, I'm devastated because I'm thinking, man, we've overcome so much. And now I'm hearing this. Like, you got to be kidding me. You can't control someone else's decisions. As you all were saying, this is absolutely right. You can only make decisions. Those decisions will guide your actions. Those decisions will guide your behaviors. They will determine your attitude. The decisions that you make in response to your partner's decisions will determine your experience within the relationship. This is why it's so important to own that what is most important is not my spouse's decision, it's my decisions in terms of my own personal experience. The decisions you make, let me say it again, the decisions you make in response to your partner's decisions will determine your experience within the relationship. It's going to determine, your decisions will determine your experience within the marriage, within the relationship. Let me define what I mean to you, because I mean, utilizing this word experience. And I actually use that word on purpose. And I mean something very specific when I use the word experience. There is a writer and philosopher by the name of Aldous Huxley who said, experience is not what happens to a man. It is what a man does with what happens to him. Experience is not what happens to a man. It is what a man does with what happens to him. I learned that saying years ago, but I first learned the principle before I actually heard the quote. And I, in my life, have always differentiated between events and my experience of the event. Events are things that can happen to you. There are things that occur outside of your skin. If your spouse comes to you and says, I don't want to be married to you anymore, that's an event. You're driving down the street, someone runs into you, they back in you. That's an event. But your response to that event, what you think, what you feel, what you say, what you do, that creates your experience of the event. Case in point, when Karen would say, when in the early years of our marriage, and I wanted to be physically intimate, and because of the PTSD, she couldn't, she would pull away. Early on, I had a certain type of an experience of that. I would feel rejected. I would get angry. I would get frustrated. I would feel unloved. Now, the event was she would turn away. My experience was I feel hurt. I feel rejected. I feel unloved. It's important to understand that events and experience are not the same. They are very different. That's an important distinction to make. It's an important distinction to hold. It's an important distinction to maintain. Events and experiences are not one and the same. The event is what occurs outside of your skin. It is what someone says to you. It is what someone does. It is a behavior. But your experience of it comes from within you. And the reason it's important is because there are a lot of events that are outside of our control. But the experience of the event, that is, as a rule, within your control. You can't control every event. I could not control my wife when she said, I don't want to be married to you anymore. I couldn't control when she was having the PTSD and she would clench up and she didn't want to be tested. I couldn't control that. I mean, I could try to force it, but it wasn't going to give me what I wanted. And I knew that, and I wasn't going to do that at all. But what I could control was my response to it. I could determine my experience. In other words, did I have to feel unloved? No. Did I have to get angry and upset and frustrated? No. Did I have to get, let's put it like this. Did I have to get frustrated? No. Frustration towards the event was one experience out of many that I could have. One experience out of many. Frustration was just one response I could have. And I chose, especially in that instance, where Karen, when she would turn away from me, I tell you what would happen. I used to get upset. I would jump out of bed. I would throw the covers back, jump out of bed, go downstairs. I would be very frustrated. I would kneel by the couch and I would pray. And I would say I always called it my Gethsemane experience. And I would pray until I was done. And then I felt more at peace and I would go back to bed. But that was my constant behavioral response. That was my constant emotional response. I would get frustrated. I would get upset at the event of her turning away from me. Until one day I was praying and I was saying to God, this is not fair, God. This is not fair. Yeah, well, from one standpoint, it's not. But I didn't know how to deal with what she was dealing with. And she at the time didn't know how to deal with it. And the answer came to me about what I should do. And I had been learning about how to change my thinking and change my responses. And I felt like God said, I want you to apply what I told you because I don't want you to jump out of bed anymore. I don't want you to get angry. I don't want you to get frustrated. I want you to stop that. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, you're going to have to show me, God, how not to do that because I don't know how to do that. And I was learning about how to change my thinking and change my responses. And I felt like he was saying to me at the time, apply what I've taught you. So I began to purposely change my response on purpose. I began to rehearse a different response over and over. Why? Because while there is the event, there is also my experience of the event. And even though the event was not under my control, I could decide how I was going to respond to it, what my experience of it was going to be. So I began to choose an experience of being calm, of responding with love, of responding with kindness. And I rehearsed that and I practiced that over and over and over and over and over. I cannot tell you how long I did, but I would literally lay on my couch and rehearse responding to the event in a different way. And I remember the very next time I reached out for Karen and she clenched and I was perfectly calm. What I literally would rehearse in my mind was being calm and collected and just giving her a kiss on the cheek saying, it's okay. And that is exactly how I responded. It is exactly, I chose a different response and I had a different experience. Now, fast forward, after things begin to change in our relationship, I asked Karen one time, when did it begin changing for you, Karen? And you know what she said to me? When you stopped jumping out of bed getting angry. And I went, whoa, I had no idea. Now, here's the thing that I want you to see. I could not control her response to me. I couldn't control the event, but I could control my response to the event. I could determine what my experience, and this is why I say it is your choice. It is your responses to your partner's choices that's most important where you are concerned. Let me read to you what Brent J. Atkinson actually has to say about this. This is the book I was telling you about, Emotional Intelligence in Couples Therapy. Wonderful book. Very clinical. It's written for therapists, but he says this. He says, researchers have discovered that the way people respond when they feel misunderstood or mistreated by their partners dramatically influence the odds that their partners will treat them better or worse in the future. Did everybody get that? Everybody hear that? Let me read it again. Researchers have discovered that the way people respond when they feel misunderstood or mistreated by their partners dramatically influences the odds that their partners will treat them better or worse in the future based upon how you respond. He goes on to say the way people respond to the worst in their partners plays a central role in determining whether or not they will experience something better from them in the future. People are almost guaranteed love relationships in which they feel respected and valued if they have certain interpersonal abilities. The good news is that when people find themselves in relationships in which they feel consistently misunderstood or mistreated, they don't have to wait around hoping that their partners will start treating them better. They can largely take the matter into their own hands. They cannot control their partners. You can't control the event, but they can dramatically influence the odds that their partner will treat them better in the future. How? By making sure that they are responding well to the things their partners do or say that are upsetting them right now. The key is how you respond to how you respond to the things that normally upset you that your partner might do. That's why I said what is most important is not the decisions your partner makes. What's most important is the decisions you make in response to your partner. That is going to influence the environment of your relationship. And according to the researchers and the research, and I've seen this in my own life, I have seen this in the lives of people that I coach, where their marriages are concerned. When they begin to take their power of choice and say, I am going to create my own experience by how I choose. I don't like this event. I don't like how my spouse is treating me, but I am going to decide how I'm going to respond. My spouse is not going to determine my response. My spouse's behavior will not determine my behavior. I'm going to determine what I'm going to think. I'm going to determine even how I'm going to feel towards them. Remember when Karen said she came to a point when she said, you know, I don't want to be married to Michael anymore. And she told me at one point, I don't want to be married to you anymore. My first response was hurt. Then my second response was anger. And I was going to a training in Florida where I was going to get some more skills on how to help people to change in their life. And I was like, I remember, I'll never forget walking to the bathroom to take a shower. And I'm thinking about what Karen had said to me the day before. And I'm like, or a few days before. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. If she wants a divorce, fine. I'm done. I'm tired. Fine. And again, I believe God spoke to me. And I won't go into detail, but I made a shift, and it was about, no, this is not about what you want. This is about what the will of God is. And I began to change my thinking. And I began to realize I need to make some changes. And I started to make some changes where I was concerned. I could not control her responses. I could not control her decisions, but I could control my response. And I decided, and this is why I was so glad because the tools that I had helped me not only to change my behavior, Because I'm not just into just changing outward behavior, but also to change my feelings, that I maintain love, that I maintain compassion, that I maintain kindness, not just outwardly, but also inwardly. But all of that, what I want to share with you all, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back and try to impress you about how saintly I am. This is about, I want to impress upon you, you can do the same thing. You can do the same thing. You can choose emotionally, how do I want to respond to this person? How do I want to be with this person? And I made those choices on a consistent basis. And we all can do this. And it changed the atmosphere. First of all, with where myself was concerned, I had a different experience. I was not looking at her every day and feeling angry. I was not looking at her and feeling depressed. I was not looking at her and feeling rejected. I chose my experience. And here's the thing, you live your life out of your experience. If you are around someone and every time you see them, you feel bad, you feel distressed, you feel down, you feel upset, you feel horrible about yourself, how do you think you're going to treat them? But what if you take charge of your experience and you feel good about yourself? We're going to talk about establishing your sense of worth and value, i.e. your self-esteem, independent of your partner. If you feel good about yourself and you feel love towards them, that's going to influence how you treat them. That's going to influence the decisions that you make. Okay? So I want you to think about it. We already kind of did this, but I think we all can look at, we won't do this last exercise, so we're almost finished here. Yeah, we're almost finished here. We've all made decisions, and that's the thing I want to share with you. We got to make decisions where we start taking charge of our experience. Sal said, that response by that experience was by giving grace. The choice is loving unconditionally. Exactly. And people always feel like, unconditional love, is that a real thing? Yes, it is. I've lived it. I've lived it. Karen has lived it. We've lived it with each other. Trust me, as nice as I am, as cute as I am, and that's a joke. I have made mistakes in our relationships. I've messed up. And I've never cheated on my wife or anything like that. But I've done dumb things, said dumb things, not intending to. And she's had to show me grace. We've shown each other grace. But the thing is, one thing Karen and we've always chose to live by is that, going back to what we've talked about before, choice. We always believe we have a choice about how we're going to respond. And like I said, in the early days, we didn't have as many tools as we do now. Our first tool was a principle, and it was, you always have a choice. And our way we made choices was basically, we would grit our teeth and make the choice and just go at it and just do our best. But then we started learning, and this is when I started learning things like NLP, and I started learning about how to shift my thinking. All of those tools I started to utilize first and foremost in my relationship with my wife. That is why I started to apply it, because I thought, I want to be faithful to my God. I want to be faithful to my wife. I loved Karen. I didn't want us to break up. But that second time when she said, I don't want to be married to you, I felt so much hurt. I was like, man, and I didn't know if I could go on. And I kept utilizing the tools that I had to make the right decision, making the right decision. And it was making the decision independent of Karen's decision. It was making my decision. We're going to talk more about this next week, about where you make your decisions from. But it was making my decisions because I had the choice. I knew I could choose my response. And that created my experience. So here's the thing. Your marriage is a reflection. Your relationships are a reflection of the decisions that you have made. If you want a better marriage, if you want a better relationship, you've got to make better decisions. And you've got to make your decisions independent of the decisions of your partner. Don't make your partner responsible for your decisions. That's one of the things when I'm coaching couples, I'm always getting them to a point where they start taking responsibility for their decisions. But they begin to say, and I asked them, what do you want to do? What's your decision? And that is the key. That's how Karen and I have been able to not just survive, but thrive for 30 years. It is something that I apply in other areas of my life. And again, let me say, you don't always have a choice about the events. You don't. There are things that are outside of your control. There are things that you do not ask for in your relationships that come up, that happen. But you always got a choice about how you respond. And your response will determine your own experience, And then your response is going to contribute to the experience of the relationship. Sal, you said your partner having good intentions versus bad, which is toxic to the marriage because it kills trust. Right. Yeah. You want to make sure your partner having good intentions versus bad. Yeah. Bad intentions are toxic. They are very, very toxic. But even if your partner, like I said, at one point, Karen didn't want to be married to me. And she expressed that. And I could have said, fine, I don't want to be married to you either. And if I made that decision, that would have created a different experience. And we could very well be divorced today. I chose a different response. She began choosing a different response. It created a different experience. What creates your experience are the decisions that you make. The only experiences are created by what we choose, how we choose to respond to our events. So,
Hey, Mike.
yes, go ahead.
Just to provide some additional things behind that, because there's so many layers. I think when we get married, I think when you're looking for, especially for those who are looking for spouses right now, or you really want someone that's willing to grow with you. Mm-hmm. And because there are areas, we all have areas of growth, and that is something that we have to be willing to provide, and to be a safe place for another person to grow. And so just as you were a safe place for me to, walk out of the PTSD, I also needed to provide some things for you in order to, for the growth that God was doing in you. And that was what, that major conversation that the Lord had with me during that time, in regards to the challenge that I had in our marriage, and what I was looking for. But one of the things that I believe that saved us, and I think if you never get anything else, the one thing that kept us and kept me from totally leaping, falling off the edge, is that we had a commitment individually outside of each other as number one to God, and that we were going to walk in love no matter what. And that walking in love, commitment to walk in love, to do no harm to the other, is really that core value that would bring us into check. And so even if you're having a hard time with your emotions and you're having a hard time with how you're responding, if you have a core value that I will do my partner no harm, that I choose to be used by God to love them and unconditionally. And while God is working with you, that your efforts are there. I really believe that the Lord honors that. I don't believe we're in this by ourselves. That's why you'll hear, us say, God was speaking to me, God was speaking to him. Because God is in the mix. When we commit to walking in love and being who he has called us to be, even if we have not grown fully up into that, even if we are we start, we stop, we start, we stop. But if we are committed that I am going to be a person who walks in love, no matter what, I believe the Lord will help us as we're growing through our own brokenness. And that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and we're going to cover that actually, as one of the things that's going to be coming up is the power of your values, because that's what she's talking about. And so that's actually coming up. And you've got to choose your values. What values are you going to be living by? And fortunately, like Karen said, for us, we had two very high values that we live by. But even values are something that you choose. You've got to choose certain values. And we're actually going to talk about how you choose your values and how you can integrate your values. But yeah, that is so very important. Karen, do you want to say anything else?
No, we have had like 33, definitely, 30 plus years, and it has been an epic journey. And I am very grateful for God bringing us out, and not being a statistic on the high end of, that we could just be another marriage that is thrown on the heap pile of divorce. But that we're on that very low percentage end where against all odds.
Yeah, or another
we
marriage
are.
where we just live together for long periods of time and we sleep in separate rooms and don't really like each other,
Exactly.
but we're still together.
Yeah, I mean, we are absolutely engaged and excited about, we're on an epic journey and we're in an epic adventure, and we're just happy to be, connected, if you will. In I use, a lot of traffic, not traffic, but like the spaceship type of metaphors, that we're in that pod together. You need to know that you want to be in a pod out there in the middle of space. Is that the person that you want to be there with? You want to be with, you want to know that that's, that you got the right person in there, because that's a very lonely feeling to be in a out there and not having someone to support you, in your time of need also. That was it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing, dear. Thank you. So, and I'm so glad she's here because she gets to share her side and her perspective, because you guys always hear from me. Let's see. Kate said, let's see. Yeah, Kate said, well said, Karen. Stay committed to God, putting him first so he can use you in the relationship. Absolutely. Absolutely. So homework assignment as we close off here. Homework assignment. First of all, let me ask you, anybody got any questions or comments? Kate just shared a comment. Any other questions, comments, rebukes, rebuttals before I give you the homework assignment? Heart? Okay, here's your homework assignment. I want you to think about and decide, and this is about making decisions. What do you decide on purpose that your experience of marriage or your experience of your relationship will be? I want you to decide on purpose from you, as far as it lies within you, what is your experience going to be? So decide what you want to experience and decide you will experience that. Now, if you're taking this with your spouse, you and your spouse can get together and say, what do we decide? What do we want our experience to be? Karen and I have done that in different ways. And as a result, there are certain experiences we've had and certain experiences we have not had, because we decided certain things we will not do in our marriage and certain things we will do. In 30 years of being married, I have never called Karen a name. I've never called her something horrible. And I remember one time somebody being very shocked at that. They went, "You've never called your wife a B?" I went, "No." They went, "Really?" I went, "No." And they were really shocked. But we have certain decisions about how we're going to respond to each other, how we're going to talk with each other. So you can decide as a couple what your experience will be. You got to decide first, what do we want more of? We want more feelings of love, more joy, communication, more playfulness. What do we want? And then making a decision, this is what we will do. A decision is a choice saying, this is what we're going to have. We're going to cut off all of the possibilities. This is the way it's going to be. Now, you might say, okay, Mike, what if my spouse is not on board with me on this? Then what do you want your experience to be? What do you want your experience to be? In other words, how do you choose to respond to your spouse and their decisions spiritually, mentally, emotionally, behaviorally from this moment forward? How do you want to respond? Remember I shared with the PTS thing? I couldn't say to Karen at that point in our marriage, hey, let's decide together that we're going to have this type of experience where our physical intimacy is concerned. That wasn't going to happen. But I could decide how I was going to respond when that came up. I decided spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and behaviorally how I was going to respond. And so you can decide the same thing. Even if your spouse is not on board with you, you make your decision, whether it's, you know what, I'm going to experience more peace, even when we're not in agreement. I'm going to experience more joy. I'm not going to wait until everything is perfect before I'm happy. I'm going to experience more joy. I'm going to treat them more lovingly, and I'm going to feel that love. I'm going to express that love in what I say and what I do. This is what I choose. So I want you to choose on purpose what you're going to do. And the way I have this set up in the homework assignment portion, you can decide it as a couple or you can decide it individually. I would say if you're in a relationship, do both. How am I going to respond individually? And then if your partner is with you, decide with your partner, how am I going to respond? You can do this with any relationship. I do this with all of my different relationships. I choose with my wife, with my kids, I choose how I'm going to respond. I've watched Karen do this with our girls. Karen makes certain choices to give them certain experiences, to give them certain memories. And they have certain experiences together. You choose it. You don't wait for it to happen. You choose it. And I have here a portion where you can write down, I have decided to have a marriage experience of, or you can write, I've decided to have a relationship experience of. I have decided that my responses to my spouse's decisions will be. So what do you decide? Now you might say, well, Mike, decision is one thing. How do I carry it through? That's what we're going to be covering in the next few sessions. But the first step is decision. It is making that this is what will be. This is how I'm going to respond. This is how I'm going to live in response to my partner. That's the first step. If you don't make that decision, nothing else is going to be of great help to you. Now, when we come back in our next session, we're going to be talking about personal responsibility. We're going to talk about identity. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about personal responsibility and who do you need to become? Because that's really important in terms of living it out. All right? Okay. And the other thing you can do too is to give you some motivation. Think about how when you have responded differently in the past to your spouse, to your partner, how it changed things. How your different response changed something. Remember I shared with you earlier, and this is where we'll close to wrap it up. Remember I shared with when Karen and I used to get together and talk about finances, it would always end poorly. It would end badly. And because of I'll take responsibility. It was the way I was responding. And it's because I felt inadequate. Because it's like, we don't have enough money. This is our early years we were married. It's like, we don't have enough money. How are we going to make this happen? What are we going to do? And so I would feel bad. And I was like, I don't want to talk about this. This is so negative. And so I would come and I would sit like this. And so she's seeing me not being engaged. And I could see it was impacting her, but I didn't care. I was like, I don't want to talk about this. This is negative. So we would end, nothing would be decided. And it would carry over to the next month. When I started learning this stuff about change, one day I'm sitting there, Karen said, we need to talk about our finances. And for some reason, it was always on a Saturday, we'd have this conversation. I'm sitting there in my chair, I'm like, ah. And all of a sudden, I became aware of how I was sitting. I became aware of how I was responding to her. And I thought, what if I responded differently? So I turned around, I sat up in my chair, I leaned forward, and I said, so what you're saying to me is this. And she went, yeah. Had a completely different experience, and it actually ended on a positive note for the first time. That taught me the power of making a change, making a choice. I chose to respond differently, and it created a different experience. And I've had couples do this, and when they go like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it was just so different. Because you make that choice to do something different. So this is why I want you to do the homework assignment to think about, what do I want to experience? What do I choose to do differently? What do I choose in terms of, well, this is what my experience will be with this person from now on. So if you look at it, you go like, you know what, when I'm around them all, I'm always frustrated. And I'm always talking in a way, I'm short. And I don't express much kindness. I don't want to do that anymore. From now on, my experience will be when I'm with them, I'm going to express kindness. I'm going to express love. I'm going to express long suffering. That is my decision. And now your brain may go, how are we going to do that? Just tell your brain, Mike will show us how if we're not sure. Mike will get to that. But this is the decision. And by the way, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have shortcomings. That's part of it. Because we have to practice these things. But I want you to make the decision of what you're going to do. Okay? All right, that's it. Do we have anything else? We're at 5:30 here, so I'm right on time. Any questions, comments before we end? Anybody want to say anything?
Just thank you both for sharing, and you guys are the best.
Oh, thank you. Kathleen, thank you, Leilani. Kathleen, how many sessions? We'll have 4 more sessions after this. Yes, we're skipping Easter and Mother's Day. I made the mistake when I first sent this out, and I said, hey, we're meeting. Karen says, you know, one of those days is Mother's Day, right? I went, oh. So I think we do have it. It's correct now. Karen made the corrections on the calendar. We won't be here on Easter. The day before that is my birthday, then it's Easter. So we won't be here for that. And we won't be here on Mother's Day. But Karen, is the schedule in the Facebook room? Did she sign
I'm
off?
sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, is the schedule in the new schedule, the corrected schedule, is it in the Facebook room?
It is actually.
Okay, yeah. So if you go look, Karen has the how do you watch the replay? We're going to put a link up. We're going to actually allow this first session to be viewed by other people so they can get the experience of it. So Karen's going to set that up so you can watch the replay of this. All right. So was this good for you guys? Helpful? Great. Karen, thank you so much for joining on with me. I didn't know she was going to be sharing this much. I'm so excited that she shared. So, all right. So, guys, we will be back here next week when we talking about responsibility and identity. Do the homework assignment. This is a coaching session. This is a workshop. Do the assignment. And when you come back, we'll take a first few minutes to talk about what you came up with. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much. God bless. We will see you all, Lord willing, next week. See you guys soon.